Hey, welcome back to another Racer X Roundtable. My name is Donnie Southers, joined as always with Kellen Brauer. We have Jason Weigandt and Mitch Kendra on today, and we are talking 250s with Hunter Lawrence wrapping up the title last weekend, Jet having an astronomical 39-point lead, and the 250s are still, or the 450s, I'm sorry, is still contestable, chases within striking distance. But since the 250 class looks all but wrapped up on both coasts, let's do a little bit of a recap before it's even over kind of thing. Talk about some surprises, some disappointments, and maybe even a little bit of preview into what we can expect in Supercross for 2024. So let's first talk about the good. Let's talk about the surprises, the guys that super overperformed. Kellen, who was one 250 rider on either coast that you thought really, really showed their stuff this year?
I mean, I think the obvious answer is Hayden Deegan. To go from is he even going to race Supercross this year to didn't go great in his futures run in Anaheim either. You know, like he was fastest, but then to finish fifth in the race, it wasn't like mind blowing stuff that he's about to come up and set the field on fire. But he's been about as consistent and as solid as you can expect from a rookie in this 250 class. Yes, it's not the best 250 season ever for a rookie, but he's stacked points. He's been in the mix. He's battled up front. He's whole shot and led main events. He's done basically everything you can ask for out of a rookie season in that regard. So for me, I think that that's like clear and away the biggest surprise, but I still think that there's plenty other obvious choices that have taken a pretty big step up this year too.
I'm glad you brought up Deegan because this year, the rookies in general, just we had an incredible rookie class in the 250s. Talon Hawkins wasn't even supposed to race at all. He stepped in when Swole got hurt. He made, a ton of mains. Hymas looked solid. Vial had a little bit of some growing pains switching over to the Supercross, but it's been a really, really good rookie season, I think, or a rookie class, and it could definitely play into the future. Weege, who was one guy that you thought really opened some eyes this year?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Deegan second in points, and Enzo Lopes now up to third in points. And I'm sure for the Club MX team, you kind of look at the fact that he's actually ahead of any of the monster Yamaha star riders. So you're even the top Yamaha team. Now, we all know short series and Supercross, a lot of it is circumstantial. Basically, who doesn't get hurt. But he's outpointed Levi Kitchen straight up. And Styles Robertson is at up and down year and has now missed a bunch of time. So I actually think that Lopes was better in the East last year than most people remember. This isn't like a 300% better performance. It's like a 10% better performance. He was like top five-ish on a good night last year, and now he's like maybe podium on a good night this year. But it's still a step up. I mean, look, if you're looking at Anaheim 1 and you said out of all these West riders, Enzo Lopes is getting up third in points, most people would be like, really? So that's a win.
Mitch, who do you got?
I'm gonna have to go with Thrasher on this one. I think Deegan is, obviously we didn't expect him to do Supercross and how he was going to fit in, but I think Thrasher, we got to give a nod to him. Obviously, he got hurt. He had the injury. McAdoo had an injury. They were both podium threat guys, and I think Thrasher took a huge leap this year. Obviously, it's a bummer to even miss him for all of the rest of this season, but all of pro motocross as well. But he had 4 podiums. He had that race win. He almost had the race win in Tampa. The Hunter stole from him at the very end there. I think he still kind of has those. He had I think 15th or so at the first East race. It wasn't great, but I think he's kind of working on that either win or 22nd, 21st. Obviously, like I said, he did get hurt, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but I think he showed that, next year he's going to take a really big step. And then I'll give a nod here to Hymas as well, like you guys talked about. He only did 4 races in the middle of the season, so not everybody remembers him at this point, really. But all 4 of his races were in the top 10. He had a solid ride at Daytona, which can be a really brutal track for rookies and stuff like that. But I think he's one of those guys that maybe we kind of forget about a little bit and fans kind of forget about a little bit. And then when pro motocross ramps up, he's running the top 15 or top 10 pick and be like, oh, wow, what happened to him? Was he injured? And then it's just that they want to get that supercross experience and kind of like Vial, they don't want him to get hurt in supercross. They just kind of want to get him through the season and then give a pro motocross a go. And then he'll kind of fully transition, into next year, all full-time supercross.
So before we move on to the maybe disappointments, or let's just say underperformers of the year, I do want to just give one more shout out to Caden Braswell. I know I mentioned the rookies and I left him out, and I really shouldn't have. He had a top 10 this year. He made 6 mains. I think he's one of those guys that came in and kind of under the radar as a rookie, overshadowed by the other guys, but really good speed out of him all season, and also an incredibly nice kid. So let's talk underperformers. Maybe this is guys that didn't live up to their expectations for the fans, or maybe it's just that the team wanted more. They did good, but the team just wanted more. Weege, let's start with you. Who was one person you wanted to see more of in the 250 class this year?
Yeah, I think if you're star in the standards they have, Styles Robertson, that's a tough one. I mean, obviously there's worse seasons out there. You guys have probably mentioned some names of, I mean, red riders not even make it to the races or get hurt immediately, which probably stings even more. Or maybe not, right? Maybe those guys get to say, well, I would have won if I was out there. I mean, Styles was pretty good at a couple of rounds this year, but I don't think it's the level that Star would want. I mean, Star right now is against this wall of the Lawrence brothers, so it's hard to win races at the moment. But you know, he wasn't quite at the level I would say either McAdoo or Hampshire or maybe even his teammate Kitchen or where Thrasher and Smith were on the East. So a couple rungs down the ladder. Okay, it's hard to beat Jet Lawrence, but I don't feel like he was even the second best guy, which probably if you're star, that's at least a realistic expectation.
Kellen, who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it has to be Michael Mosiman. Unfortunately, we all love him and his goofiness and his goofy personality and all that, but it just didn't go any way for him this year. It's not even that he had some momentum at some point. I know he was battling at the front in one of the Triple Crown races at Arlington, but even that, it didn't look like he had the speed or the comfort, and started going backwards and then fell, and it just nothing seemed to go right. You know, we did hear a little bit more that he had some lingering issues from the offseason, injury related, that made it a little bit more difficult for him. And obviously, it also switched over to the new gas platform, which had not been previously used. Husky and KTM had it the year before, but Brown kind of made it work and was pretty good on his coast. And obviously, Barsha's done pretty well on a 450. So I think, unfortunately for Mosiman, it just is too many issues stacked against him to have any semblance of, hey, well, this kind of went okay, so you can say this that the season looked half decent here. Nothing seemed to go right for him.
I'm going to go and say somebody that did really, really good, but I think has to kind of be considered a disappointment for him, and that's Cameron McAdoo. He obviously had a ton of podiums, and there's nothing to be wrong with that, but I don't think he or Mitch at Pro Circuit thought that RJ was going to catch and pass him every single week. I had McAdoo coming in as kind of that guy that if something happened to a Lawrence brother, he would be the guy to come in, and he really didn't have anything for RJ. And I think that, McAdoo's been in the series now, RJ as well. They've been in the series for many years. So it's kind of getting to be that point of like, they really need to produce those wins and those titles. And again, I feel really unfair because Cameron's a really nice guy. And it's hard to complain about a guy getting four podiums out of 5 rounds. But McAdoo, I really was hoping to see a little bit better out of. Mitch, you're up. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm kind of going with Kellen on this one. I was expecting a little bit more out of Mosiman, and I think, like, again, not to make excuses, but his neck injury, like we are a little bit talking about before this, I don't think we knew how serious it was and everything last year. So if that's kind of impacting him a little bit, like Kellen said, there was just some goofy stuff, and he crashes in the over/under bridge going under there. It's just a weird spot. He just gets hit down and stuff like that. It's for season. I think Joe Moda really had him as, for me, it was going to be him versus Hunter Lawrence in this East Coast Championship, and obviously it's not his fault, but he did get injured. So for him, that was his first real time, injured as a pro, missing a full length of a season. And then obviously he came back, had an okay night in the mud, New Jersey, and then had his podium finish over this weekend in Nashville. But I really expected him to be a podium threat every week, maybe get a race win or two, and really be that guy that's battling battling Hunter Lawrence. And that's kind of where Nate Thrasher took that step up. I was kind of waiting for Shimoda to be there right with him. Like I said, he was just sidelined with injury, so it's tough to say that it was really disappointing for him because we didn't get to see a lot of him, but it's just a bummer we didn't get to see him really.
Question for all of you guys. I'll go one at a time, but we had 2 fill-ins this year, 2 major fill-ins. We obviously had, and they were both for Pro Circuit. We have Chris Blows filling in on one coast. We had Carson Mumford on the other one. A lot of people, myself included, were really excited to see Mumford get that ride because, he was next in line at Honda. He was supposed to be the thing. Then obviously Geico got shut down. He got shuffled around some smaller market teams, and then he's finally getting his shot. On the other side, Chris Blows, obviously veteran, 15 years in the sport, retired, kind of coming off the couch. Should we be more impressed that Blows came off the couch and had a top 5 and he logged top 10s in just about every round? Or should we be more disappointed that on the same bike, Mumford, went 8, 10, 7 in his 3 rounds? Kellen, what do you think?
I mean, I think I'll give Mumford a little bit of a pass here. He was coming off of injury anyway and had to miss a couple of the rounds that he was scheduled to race for Pro Circuit because of injuries. He got on the bike, then got a little bit hurt again. I think it was an Achilles injury, but it wasn't a tear, fortunately. So, even the first race back that we finally saw him at Seattle, I walked onto the plane behind him and it was a very noticeable limp. And he had told us at Seattle that, he felt okay on the bike, but even when someone's walking around the pits and it looks like they have to be helped around, they're not going to be 100%. So I'll give him up for a little bit of a pass here. I would say for Blos, I'm a little bit, I guess, more disappointed in him just because, yes, I know he retired. Yes, he came off the couch, but he had just raced World Supercross before this. So I expected, I think personally, a little bit more from Blos, and I would give him up for a little bit more of a pass in that realm.
That's fair. Mitch, how did you feel about the 2 Pro Circuit fill-ins?
I wouldn't say it was a disappointing season for Blos, obviously giving everything that's, him being retired first year with the team and kind of learning that, but I was kind of waiting for him to bust into the top 5, just with his experience and stuff. And really, you want to think about it, like looking at it right now, Mumford has 15 250 Supercross starts, and 3 of those this year came with Kawasaki. So he's still learning. Like there's so many guys, Joe Shimoda is one of the more experienced guys in the 250 class now. RJ Hampshire is obviously one of the top guys there, McAdoo. But I think Mumford is just, these guys are so new to Supercross, like we mentioned, and between getting hurt in the off season or getting hurt at the races, there's a big difference in, maybe Blos' season wasn't spectacular if this is going to be his last year, whatever, but for him to just ride it through, obviously he's not just mailing it in, but for him to just get those solid top 10 finishes, maybe isn't where he wanted to be, but he's able to do that. Whereas, again, some of these guys are just so young and green to everything that they're just not even able to make it through the whole series.
So I feel a little bit rude to the outdoor series to kind of skip ahead and do a little silly season 2024 before we still have half of the SMX championship to go. But let's talk about some guys moving around here. Mumford, obviously, we don't really know what's going on. It would be cool to see Pro Circuit keep a hold of him, but he also technically had a deal with BarX just a few months ago. So we obviously have people moving around. We know that Levi Kitchen's deal is up. We know Shimoda's deal is up. Michael Mosman's deal is up, among some other ones. And there's also rumors of Hunter Lawrence possibly moving up to the 450 class as early as Supercross next year. And if him and Jet, who obviously is forced to move up, it leaves a big void in the top of these 250 classes. So let's talk about some guys, some early favorites for next year. Weege, who do you think is the one, no matter what coast he lines up on, if there's not a Lawrence, who's going to be the clear-cut favorite coming into 2024?
Yeah, I think the winds of the industry have all pointed towards Shimoda. And that was impressive work. I'll even give credit to his agent, Lucas Myrtle, who does a great job for his clients. Because remember, Shimoda was not good in Supercross last year and then wasn't racing Supercross this year. Now, because he was good outdoors, we kind of thought that this year he'd fix it in Supercross, but we didn't see it. And despite that, I feel like there was still quite a bit of a bidding war for Joe. Now it's all worked out because since he's come back, he's been very good. Was 4th immediately, got a podium over the weekend. So that bore itself out. But the fact that 2 months ago, everybody seemed to think of him as kind of like we're looking at it, right? Like who's the top non-Lawrence when they're out of the class? It was him. So yeah, I think Shimoda's the big winner of all this. I thought it might be Kitchen, but I feel like there's been more talk and maybe even more bidding toward Joe.
Kellen, where do you have the guys?
Yeah, I think the silly season shuffle is definitely going to be interesting, and I think, well, depending on where these guys like Shimoda ends up, or Kitchen or Voland or whatever, I think we'll see a mixed bag of results from them, just because they'll be shifting and getting used to a new team and a new program. So I would personally stick with the more established guys moving into next year, like a RJ Hampshire, Cameron McAdoo, maybe Austin Faulkner coming back as these guys that you look at as the clear-cut favorites of the class. But I'm actually going to go off the wall a little bit. I think year 2, based on what I've seen in the first year, and it sounds like I'm talking about him too much, I think Hayden Deegan goes right into title contention. I really do. Based on what I've seen this year, not many rookies go from that to winning titles that quickly, but I don't think Hayden Deegan's any other rookies. So you're going to see kind of the shift of that rookie class that we saw coming in this year, taking it to the established veterans, I think, pretty quickly based on what I've already seen.
Mitch, so we had going back to RJ Hampshire, obviously he had all second places behind Jet except the 2 11th and a 13th because he ended up crashing out. And then you look at somebody like Jordan Smith who had kind of a similar thing. He was podium almost every time except for those other ones. Do you think that those guys, Smith and RJ and even Maka, do you think they can clean it up and be title favorites next year?
I think one thing that you guys mentioned a little bit about the guys shuffling around in different bikes and different teams and stuff like that. For sure, RJ is going to be back at Husky. I believe it's going to be about the same platform, 250 bike wise, but he's going to have the same people around him. He's going to be there for a couple of years. Same thing. I don't know McAdoo if he's going to be back at Kawasaki, but that's a program he's familiar with. And then, like you mentioned, Jordan Smith will be back at Star. These are guys that have won races. They've either been in championship battles before, whatever, a little bit, maybe not throughout the whole season. But like you said, they've kind of had those issues. I think those are guys where, if say these younger guys are switching teams, they're still learning Supercross, they're learning their new teams. If these guys can clean it up, we could have that, once again, that old guys, I don't say old guys, but the veteran guys versus the new guys is, again, the veteran guys might win out because they have more experience to begin with. They've raced more times, but then they've also been on the same team and they've been on the same program and the people around them are familiar. That's a big thing we talk about in the terms of 450 class, even with Eli Tomac. It's the bike, it's the setup, but it also is the people around him. So I think that's something to consider. Like you said, with Jordan Smith, he wanted to get a win. He had that little mistake over the weekend. He could be a guy that he cleans it up. He trained a lot last summer with the Star guys without even racing. And then he came in and had a strong season. But again, a couple of those races cost him. So maybe those three guys between Smith, Hampshire, McAdoo, if they can come back to the same program and just keep a lot of the things similar, if they just clean up a little bit of things here and there, I think those guys might even sneak out, like I said, be better than those guys like Kitchen and these guys that are switching teams, new program all the way around.
It's fair. All right, so before we wrap it up, we can't skip outdoors entirely. Let's do a little bit of outdoor preview. So Jet obviously moving up. Title favorite, just one guy. Who's taking home the title this year? Is it Hunter or is it the field? Weege, who do you got?
Yeah, I think Hunter's the favorite, no doubt about it, but we cannot sleep on Justin Cooper. And I understand why we're all forgetting Justin Cooper. He's not racing. And even when he does, he's not on a 250. So I don't think everyone is remembering, oh, yeah, Justin Cooper's still out there. He will be back for 250 motocross. But I've said it a lot. If you put a lie detector to Justin Cooper and say, can you beat Hunter Lawrence for the title? I don't know exactly how lie detectors work, but it wouldn't blip. Is that what they do? Is that what they do? Whatever they do to detect a lie, it wouldn't detect a lie. Justin Cooper, I don't believe, okay, maybe Jet would be a tough customer for him, but I think Cooper even thinks he could take him down if Jet decided to come back. I don't think he's afraid of Hunter or anybody. So I'm tempted to go a little 1A, 1B. I do not want to write off Justin Cooper. I think everybody knows that Hunter should be the favorite, but Justin Cooper is a bad dude. We should not be surprised at all if he whole shots and immediately wins right off the bat. And then we'll be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Cooper.
And he had a couple of solid 450 races so far. Again,
Yeah.
He was kind of in that high middle of the season, came out without people really, taking it all in.
Yeah.
Again, and just racing against those older guys who, again, have more experience and stuff like that, that could bode well for him. He's regularly a good starter, like Weege mentioned. So that's just something to consider.
So Kellen, let's say something happens, Cooper and Hunter, neither of them win the title. If both of them lose the title, who do you think wins it?
I think based on history and based on just how he's come back as quickly as he has, I'd probably go Joe Shimoda. He beat Hunter Lawrence to second in the outdoors last year. So power rankings wise, you maybe put him ahead of Hunter going in, but then obviously he's coming off the injuries, so maybe you don't. I do think that he's maybe not getting enough credit based on what he did outdoors last year, and I think it might be a slow roll to get there, but I definitely think he's going to be a factor. I think for me, the biggest thing I'm going to look for outdoors this year is kind of the wild cards of like a Tom Vial and a Jeremy Martin in a sense, because, J-Mart, even though he's on club 2 years ago, was winning motos on a star bike and doing so while not 100%. So I think that there's ample chance that he could take that bike and still do great things outdoors. And then Tom Vial is a world champion in MX2. He's going to be racing tracks that he's not raced before or even been on before, but he's a world champion for a reason. Like there's a lot of guys that wish they had the pedigree of Tom Vial coming into an outdoor championship like this. And I think that, he's made it through Supercross reasonably healthy. And now we get to see what his real bread and butter is rolling into the outdoors here.
Hey,
Yeah.
Kellen, by the way, with Vial, he almost podiumed the very first Supercross. that he was in.
Mm-hmm.
If you had told me then that he would end up not even coming close to a podium unless he gets one at Salt Lake City, which I think would be tough in a showdown, I'd have been surprised. Are you surprised it trended the way it did? Because it was like, oh, wait, he's really good at this immediately. And then it actually went backwards the more experience he got.
Yes and no. I think that the thing about Vial is he's always been the starter, and I don't just mean that in terms of he gets good starts. I mean that he starts seasons strong. Like even in his MXGP title winning seasons, he was the guy that was going 1-1-1-1-1-1 to start the year, and then Yago Geertz would start getting in the mix, or who else would get in the battle. And so I think that there was always going to be a little bit of a cliff, and it was exacerbated by the fact that he started crashing more often. So it didn't help his case that he was maybe getting a little bit scared of certain things, like, oh, these whoops are way gnarlier than I expected. I'm going over the bars in them more often than I thought. And then he had a big one this past weekend, even in Nashville. So yes and no. I think that there was maybe a chance that things went a little bit better, but that was going to happen as a rookie in this class coming over racing Supercross for the first time. He's going to have the bumps and bruises like that.
Hey, and one thing you got to think too, his early lap crashes were at Daytona and Atlanta, which were arguably the most outdoors, kind of longer lap time, maybe more brutal track. And I think those were he had two, 21st, 22nd finishes, and those were those again. So I don't want to say it's a guarantee he gets a top 5, but maybe those are the races where he kind of has that ride that you're like, okay, this, now we're going to see this for outdoors for sure. So I think him going down early in those ones, like you said, he has usually a great starter, but those ones, I mean, he crashed in Daytona when he was up pretty front, so that was just a bummer. But the Atlanta one just got kind of tangled up. But yeah,
we're going to find out real soon the Works KTM 250s that had pretty much owned MX2 for like a dozen years. Now the Yamahas have made good inroads versus the production bike. I mean, dude, it was like whoever they put on the KTM was going to whole shot all the time in GPs. So we'll see if Vial can be like that on this bike. That's going to tell a lot, I think, for outdoors.
Well, I would be interested in all of your guys' opinion of this. I'm just going to remain neutral on this. If Vial goes out to Fox Raceway and let's just say he wins a moto, are you guys surprised?
No, I'm not. No.
No, I agree.
Okay.
Like, I would not be shocked at all. I would honestly be a little shocked if he doesn't win a moto this year. I would be more on that side. Yeah, I expect him to win motos for sure.
I mean, think of it from this perspective. We just got done talking about Hunter Lawrence and the great season he's had. I mean, he came off an injury in Supercross his first year here and still won 2 motos outdoors that year against, Justin Cooper and Adam Cianciarulo and guys like that. So I just think that Vial, maybe he's going to get slept on a little bit coming into nationals.
He's a 2-time champ for a reason over there in MX2. So it's going to be new tracks to him, obviously here, but he was the champion. So you kind of have to respect that,
And is that a track? I know he's been in Florida a lot. Maybe that's a track he can get more time on. Look, there's no way he's ever going to have ridden Unadilla until he gets there. Probably Southwick, tracks like that. But he could probably get some time at Fox Raceway. It's not. Well, Kellen, you live out there. It's not the same, but it's helpful, I would think, right?
Yeah, it at the very least you kind of get an understanding of how the ruts form on that track.
Yeah.
It's going to be wildly different in terms of the loaminess and the depth of the track and how much they water, but how to ride the edges of the track out here for sure. And you'll see those guys that are more familiar with this territory out here start riding the walls of the track later in the day. That's because that's exactly what they do out here when they're testing.
And I have to wonder with him, we've seen dudes, remember Voland probably should have won the first moto of the year a couple years ago, but he had missed all of Supercross and he was probably in full outdoor prep and other guys weren't thinking about it. Vial's still racing Supercross, but at least if you try to think of where his focus is right now, a lot of these guys are probably going to go into Fox Raceway being like, oh, I'm going to see where I'm at. Can't win it in the first race, but you could certainly lose it. There's a chance that Vial's like, all right, that 5 months sucked. I'm back, baby. So he might just come out super fired up, more so than the other guys who are maybe a little in a protect their defense, don't screw it up round 1 mode.
And like Kelly mentioned, somebody like Jeremy Martin, dude, he said he's been riding outdoors basically since the Detroit race. So, he's hungry. He's a 2-time champ. Like Kellen said, he's on a new team. So we'll see how that gels outdoor-wise. But, we know for sure talking with him after the races, he's chomping at the bit. He was excited to do some outdoor training. He's like, oh, I'm going to let the big dog eat and everything. So, again, he's somebody that, these guys are kind of maybe winding down from Supercross, like motocross. And, these guys are going to hopefully come out swinging.
And on that same point, I think Max Anstey could be the same kind of guy, come out whole shot and just lead the whole first moto, because if he was racing outdoors, that is. So we'll get to the World Supercross thing next week, I think, maybe, or the week after that, because there's a bunch of guys that are going to be missing from outdoors. Maybe some guys that will surprise you.
Hey, on that topic, it's kind of silly season related, a little bit 450 wise, but it'd be silly for a team not to pick up Kevin Moranz. I mean, Rockstar NG Husqvarna has Christian Craig and Malcolm Stewart both out with injury. Moranz is a great starter. You know, he's consistently up there pretty much every heat race now, almost qualifying through all of his heat races in the last couple, 5 or 6 races, I think. He's a great ambassador for his sponsors. Just had to throw a bone there to Moranz. I think he'd be.
And he does outdoors. Like some of these dudes are Supercross. Some of those bubble main event guys are like clearly way better at one or the other. Like on the other end, you have Freddie Noren, who's a bubble main event guy in Supercross, but is really good outdoors. A lot of them go the opposite. But Moranz, I think, has proven he can do outdoors, right?
Yeah, and he's been, he has kind of his own program a little bit. He has help with transportation going to the races, but for a team that doesn't have anybody on the track, Gas has Barsha injured now for the next couple of weeks at least with a collarbone. Plessinger might race this weekend, but Marvin's out, Cooper Webb's out, and then Husky again with their 2 guys out. Obviously not comparing those guys to Kevin Moranz, but that would be a great opportunity for somebody like him to just get on the bike a couple of weeks, show the sponsor some love, get the bike up there onto TV time with a great start, and then it'd just be a great opportunity for him as well. So I just had to throw him a bone there. So I know a little 250 talk, but again, it'd be silly not to pick him up. He's just a great guy.
Similarly, I'm kind of surprised that they're not taking RJ, because I could see him being that kind of guy to follow Brandon Hartranft, plan of never quite getting the title done, but just jumping up to 450s anyway. And honestly, being a really solid main event guy. And it's a shame we didn't have Brandon this year, because just looking at the rest of this, stack up, I think that Brandon could have been a top 10 guy. We saw RJ speed at Daytona. I think he could have easily been a top 10 guy even without that 250 title. So yeah, I'm with you, Mitch. It's a real bummer that it doesn't look like Husky's going to put anybody on that 450, but yeah, I'm with you. If anybody, if not RJ, if anybody else, it should be Kevin Moranz.
Yeah, and RJ's one of those guys too. He's going to come swinging for outdoors as well. He loves going, winning motos in crappy conditions, and he's a gritty rider. So
yeah, for sure. All right, well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. For Kellen Brauer, Mitch Kendra, and Jason Weigandt, my name is Donnie Southers. Leave your comments below. Let us know what we got right, what we got wrong, and who you think the favorites are going to be for the 2024 Supercross title. Thanks, as always, for watching a Racer X Roundtable. Be sure to visit racerxonline.com for all your motocross and Supercross news.